Okay, imagine this scenario for a moment. You're driving through, let's say, East Legon in Accra, Ghana. One of those really desirable, affluent neighborhoods, right?
Yeah, you expect it to be lively.
Exactly. Bustling, full of life. But instead what you see are these, well, the article calls them posh, but empty houses just sitting there, staring, beckoning.
Huh, like demigods which have lost all their relevance. That's quite a phrase the author uses.
It really is. It's just unexpected. You see these grand places and nobody's home. Makes you wonder, what's going on.
Absolutely, and that's precisely what we're getting into today. This is a deep dive into, well, a surprising and, frankly, quite frustrating paradox. This abundance of empty, high-end luxury homes in Accra, sitting right there while the city faces this huge housing deficit, it doesn't seem to add up.
Right. And our source for exploring this is an article from My Joy Online by Kwadwo Ajapong Antwe. It's titled Accra, A Tale of Empty Mansions and Homeless People. Pretty direct.
Very. So our aim here is really to unpack what the author presents as essentially a market failure. We want to look at the impact, the implications, and the really quite surprising reasons the author suggests are behind all this.
Okay, let's start with that image again, those empty houses in East Legon. The article mentions they're often guarded by extremely bored security men-women.
Yeah.
It paints quite a picture.
It does, almost like ghost mansions, as you said.
Yeah. So let's unpack this visual. What's the core paradox the author is getting at?
Well, the author really boils it down quite powerfully, I think. He says, houses are owned by people who don't need them and needed by people who can't afford them.
Wow, that's dark.
It is, and he describes it as this interesting kind of gentrification.
How so?
Well, usually gentrification means wealthier people move in, prices go up, and lower income residents are displaced. But here, the author says the wealthy drive out others.
Okay.
Build these houses and apartments that then just sit empty. They don't even occupy them themselves often. It's a very peculiar twist.
That is bizarre. So is this just an East Legon thing, or is it happening elsewhere in Accra?
According to the article, it's far from unique. The author makes it clear that many of the other prime neighborhoods in Accra are largely empty too.
So it's widespread in the desirable areas.
Exactly. And this is happening while Ghana, as a whole, has what the author calls a massive housing deficit. So it's not a lack of houses overall, maybe, but a massive luxury housing surplus, which serves little to no purpose. It seems like a huge mismatch.
And the frustration, I imagine, is also about where these empty houses are located. The article points out they occupy the best parts of the city, parts which are closer to the business centers.
Precisely. Prime real estate, just sitting idle. And the author highlights the direct impact this has on the working population.
Which is?
Well, while these fantastic centrally located homes are empty, the working class spend productive hours in the torturous Accra traffic to and from their abodes in the hinterlands.
Ah, the commute. Hours wasted.
Hours and hours. Time that could be, productive time, family time, anything else, really.
And the article also touches on the cost barrier, right? Even for apartments that should be accessible.
Yes, that's another key point. The author states that even nice apartments cannot be rented by some of her most senior working class people due to outrageous prices.
Outrageous prices.
And often quoted in dollars, apparently, which makes them even further out of reach. He notes that these kinds of apartments used to be the preserve of the working class, but not anymore.
So the houses are empty. The apartments are unaffordable for many who need them. What does the author make of all this? What does he call it?
He calls it, pretty bluntly, an obvious market failure.
Hard to disagree based on that description.
Right, and he links it to a broader point about inequality. The author argues that, okay, maybe some inequality is needed for capitalism to function, but at a certain point, inequality becomes capitalism's own nemesis and doesn't benefit society. It raises the question of whether this situation in Accra is an example of that inequality hindering rather than helping.
Okay, so we've got the picture. Empty mansions, long commutes, affordability issues, a potential market failure linked to inequality. But the why is still nagging me. Why build something so expensive just to leave it empty? This is where the article gets really interesting, doesn't it? It suggests some pretty specific reasons tied to Ghana.
It really does. This is where we get into the underlying drivers, according to the author. And the first one he identifies is quite striking.
Go on.
He says that a key component of our model for wealth acquisition is putting up of buildings, especially opulent buildings, when the wealth is acquired illegitimately.
Wow, okay, so illicit money potentially being funneled into these status symbols.
That seems to be the implication. The author clarifies these buildings often wouldn't be occupied by their owners in their lifetime and/or third parties who cannot afford the rent.
So not for living in, not really for renting out.
Yeah.
Then what's the point?
Pride and accomplishment. According to the author, building these structures, even if they sit idle, nonetheless creates a feeling of pride and accomplishment for those who put up them. It's about the statement they make.
A very expensive statement.
Indeed. And then the author adds this fascinating psychological layer.
Oh.
He suggests this drive partly stems from our inability to assimilate our mortality in our decision-making. Meaning, as he puts it, we plan for eternity on Earth, and around 70 years we're already checking out. It's like building monuments for a future you won't fully experience, perhaps disconnected from practical needs.
That's quite profound. A sort of denial of mortality expressed through concrete and luxury finishes.
It's a compelling, if slightly tragic, idea presented by the author, but he doesn't stop at psychology. He also points to systemic issues.
Right. What else does he mention?
Well, he states it's also partly orchestrated by a lopsided economy which delivers wealth to a few people. So the economic system itself concentrates wealth in a way that enables this.
And politics.
Yes, he brings that in too. The author mentions a political class who themselves are often key architects and beneficiaries of this rather unfortunate economic system we've invented for ourselves.
So the author is suggesting a link between the economic structure, the political class, and this specific outcome of empty luxury housing. These are strong claims.
They're strong claims presented in the article as contributing factors to this whole situation. It paints a picture of a complex interplay between illicit finance, status-seeking, psychology, and broader economic and political structures.
Okay, so just to summarize for you, the listener, what we've unpacked from this article, we started with that really striking visual. Empty, opulent homes in Accra's best areas, right alongside a major housing shortage.
Yeah, stark contrast.
Then we looked at the costs, the economic inefficiency, the social cost for commuters, the frustration of unaffordable housing, even for professionals.
Which the author frames as a clear market failure, potentially linked to excessive inequality.
And finally, we dove into the author's explanation for why this happens specifically in this context. A model where wealth, sometimes illicit, is displayed through unoccupied buildings.
Driven, according to the author, by a desire for status, perhaps some psychological disconnects around mortality, and enabled by what he describes as lopsided economic and political systems.
It's a really complex picture painted by the author.
Absolutely. And that conclusion the author draws about inequality is worth thinking about again, that it can reach a point where it undermines the system itself, becoming capitalism's own nemesis, failing to benefit society.
Which leads us to a final thought, something for you to mull over. If, as the article suggests, this immense pride and sense of accomplishment comes from building these grand, often empty structures.
Structures built at a significant cost, both financially and in terms of opportunity cost for housing actual people.
Exactly. If that's the case, what does it really tell us about how we, perhaps collectively or within specific contexts, define wealth, success, and maybe even legacy?